When someone goes to a bank to get a loan, sometimes the individual is not allowed to take the loan because the bank sees you don't have sufficient income. But what if you have someone that can co-sign with you? Let's say a parent or a best friend or someone with a higher income. Now the bank has more security. In case you can't repay the loan, they will charge the one that co-signs the contract. So when you co-sign something, you become liable anytime the original individual who applied for the loan cannot pay it back. You are not the one that requested the loan. The other individual did, but you co-signed with the individual just to be a security in case the other individual can't fulfill his or her obligations. Now, that is the legal definition of co-signing. There's also a spiritual definition. Anytime you agree with someone or something that does not glorify nor magnify the Heavenly Father, you are co-signing with dysfunction. Let me give an example. Let's say you have this culture that tells you that women don't need men. Hold on a minute. Didn't that Father create us male and female, Adam and Eve? So yes, we do need one another. However, if you have women keep saying that they are independent and hold on to this myth of being an independent woman, if you co-sign that, you become a participant in the sexual dysfunction of your community. And by becoming that, you become responsible also for the harm that comes from it. For example, let me give you another example. Let's say you have a man that says, you know what, beating a child is not really that bad as long as you do it in a moderate way. As long as you do it just for discipline, not just to act out. But hold on a minute. You ask that man, would you beat your employer when he goes too far? Would you beat a fellow colleague? Would you beat your wife if she goes too far? You would say, oh, absolutely not. Then why are you beating a child? Children who have no mental reference. Children who are the easiest to deal with because they can't do anything on their own. You can't handle a child? You have to beat and escalate on a child? So in this case, you've challenged the negative attitude of the individual. But what if you have someone who says, well, you know, I'm not for beating children. Yeah, sometimes children can be a bit annoying. So, okay, so let's say you co-sign what they're doing. You now become liable and you now become responsible for child abuse in your community, and you become a stakeholder of the negativity that afflicts the adults. Because the adults who suffer deep-rooted mental issues, those deep-rooted mental issues come from their childhood. And because you endorse child abuse, you are also now responsible for whatever those adults are going through. As simple as that. Just go to any courthouse. If someone asks for a loan and you co-sign the contract, even if it's not you who was the original one that asked the loan, even though you did not receive any of the money, let's say your brother asked for a loan of $20,000. He received the $20,000. You didn't receive a penny. Let's say your brother refused to pay back the loan. Now, if you did not co-sign the contract, they can't do anything. But the moment you co-sign the contract just to help him out, the day he refuses to pay back the loan, they can charge your bank account or they can arrest you. That's how it goes. Anytime you co-sign something, you are a participant of the thing you co-signed, even if you never benefited from it, even if you were not the primary individual that participated in the agreement. You are a part of it. But some say it's unfair. Well, actually it is fair, because you knew the risks that when you co-sign something, you may end up being charged if it goes wrong. So, in the courthouses, you can never get away by saying, hey, I had no idea this would go this way. They will say, but sir or ma'am, you co-signed this. Now, the same it is in the spirit world. A lot of people out there are so fed up and upset with all the dysfunction in the community. But they forget that they are the ones that enabled all that dysfunction. Anytime their parents escalating on children and people don't intervene because say, well, it's their privacy, it's their children, who am I? And the people make excuses, they are co-signing child abuse. Anytime a woman escalates on her husband and abuses her husband, and people just excuse her, saying, well, she's out of line, but she may have her reasons, and then people co-sign this feminist bullshit, they are co-signing with abuse against men. And they're co-signing domestic violence. Anytime mainstream media covers up something and people don't call out to mainstream media about it, they are co-signing with the deception. Anytime a politician comes with a plan that doesn't add up, and people just take it, people don't resist, the public does not revolt, the public co-signs it. Now, just because someone is doing something that's wrong and you don't resist it doesn't mean that it's okay for them to do it. For example, if someone tries to rape you, for example, and you didn't resist, doesn't mean that the rape is okay. It's still a rape. If someone, let me say, tried to kill you, and you didn't do anything to prevent it, it doesn't mean that them killing you is the right thing. No, it's still wrong. However, you had the option to face what's going on, and you didn't do anything about it. So indirectly, you become a participant of what they're doing. It's still wrong what they're doing. They still have no right to do it. But because you did not take constructive action against it, you become a participant of the wrong that's happening, even if it's something against you. You can be a participant in your own victimization. That happens with a lot of people. Now, in a similar way, understand this. Anytime a community, anytime a group of people don't want to face their own participation in the dysfunction that afflicts them, they become narcissistic. From that point on, the community is narcissistic. And from that point on, the people there are becoming delusional. Because they don't want to deal with what's in front of them, they begin to deny what's in front of them, they begin to ignore it, and by ignoring the issues, things will get worse. And once things get worse, now they want to escalate on someone to feel better. That's how it goes. What I'm saying here is that you need to beware what you co-sign. Look, there are things you should co-sign. For example, if someone tells you that they've realized they've been an asshole and they want to be a better human being, you can co-sign that, absolutely. If someone realizes that their parents were out of line and their parents want to change for the better and they lower contact with the parents, you can co-sign that. When someone admits that they are dysfunctional, but they admit that they didn't end up dysfunctional by themselves, they were raised the wrong way or they were traumatized, you can co-sign that because that's factual. You didn't create yourself and you didn't raise yourself. But you cannot co-sign someone just playing the victim and not looking for a solution. What I'm saying is there are things you should and you can co-sign, but there are a lot of things you should never co-sign. And what I'm realizing right now is that a lot of times people co-sign things of which they know they should never co-sign. And later, when the dysfunction becomes worse and worse, now the same people that co-signed it from the start are now turning against the same thing they've co-signed. And then it appears like those people have changed for the better. It appears like they've grown. They have not. You have people that grow and become better people, absolutely. But a lot of folks, they only appear like they've grown because they're now opposing the same thing they've co-signed. For example, let's say there's someone that co-signed beating children. Because they thought, hey, if a child doesn't listen, just beat the child. Then the child listens. They co-signed this. They allowed a lot of child abuse to happen unchallenged. And now, a few decades later, there is an increase in violent crime in the community. And there are many people losing their mind. There's a lot of domestic violence. And one of those individuals that co-signed beating children, his granddaughter now is in hospital because she was beaten by her boyfriend. Now, suddenly this man says he's against using violence on anyone. Hold on. Didn't he even beat his own children while they were growing up? Didn't he even endorse his own children to beat his grandchildren? Didn't he co-sign it since he was young just to hit a child, just to escalate? Why is he against it now? The thing is, he's still in agreement with escalating on people, but now because he is the one facing the consequences in a painful way of the thing he co-signed, now suddenly he opposes it. He only opposes it because it's him that now need to face the bad consequences. All the other times when there were other people dealing with the consequences, he didn't bother. So beware with people who oppose things they've co-signed. Now look, if you co-signed something in the past and now you're against it, why are you against it? Are you against it because you have an alternative? Are you against it because you become a better human being and you want people to learn from the past and process things? Or are you just against it because you don't want to deal with the consequences? If you are against it just because you don't want to deal with the consequences, but you were for it in the past when you had benefits, then you are just a two-faced hypocrite. If someone has repented from bad things they've co-signed, then you must see the fruit of the spirits in them. You must see that they are now co-signing better things. You must see now that they are co-signing more effective things. If they don't come with a better alternative, but they just want to escalate against something they use to co-sign, then they just don't want to face themselves. That's it. I mean it. Too many people only act out against evil when the evil is harming them. When the evil did not harm them directly, they couldn't care less. They didn't even want to talk about it. So what I'm teaching you here is that to keep a community safe and healthy, you cannot co-sign any form of violence and you cannot co-sign any type of neglect. Because neglect is also violence. But I mention neglect separately because too often we co-sign neglect. When someone tells you that in life you don't owe anyone anything, that the world doesn't owe you anything, such an individual is narcissistic. If we don't address that faulty way of thinking, we end up co-signing narcissistic violence. Not addressing issues from the start is neglect. If something is a serious matter that can bring harm and you don't address it from the start, then you have co-signed neglect. And when things get worse, you have to face that you participate in things becoming worse. You can still change, you can still change for the better and repent and all of that, but before that can happen, you have to admit that you've participated how it has become. You can't just escalate as if you have no idea what's going on. You can't just escalate and pretend like you can't understand how horrible people are. You participate in how things ended up. Admit it. Admit your part. And that's something most people don't want to do. They don't want to admit their part in how bad things become. Look, if there's an increase in violent crime in the community, stabbings, burglaries, rapes and all of that, you may not be the one doing all those crimes. No, you're not. But if you have an attitude that you just want to be left alone and you don't bother with anyone else, you don't even bother with the community, you just only do, you just mind your own business, then you are a participant in the violence of the community because you're operating in neglect. You can't operate in neglect and at the same time get upset when neglect unfolds in harm. You can't water the root but fight against the fruit. A lot of people want to fight against the fruit but they keep watering the root. If you don't want the fruit, stop watering the root. And I'm explaining the following to you. Many of the issues and conflicts you've went through while growing up and that you're still going through now as an adult, they have roots in community neglect. The people around you are neglectful. But you never notice this. Once you notice that the people around you are neglectful, now you realize that you should relate to them in a better way. With better, I mean you realize that they're neglectful, so you can't entrust everything to them, and you can't be yoked with them, and you can't be too involved with them because they are neglectful. Too often, we don't get solutions in life because we don't see the root of stuff. I just explained to you the number one reason why there's so much evil and violence on the earth is human neglect. Not Satan, not demons, not paranormal, human neglect. So face the human neglect, whether it's neglect on your part or neglect from the community. Now, neglect on your part, you can do something about it. Neglect on part of the community, you can't directly change it by yourself, but you can push for improvement in the community. Then you do that. Just because you can't change it directly doesn't mean you're not responsible for how you deal with it. So the argument, if you can't control it, it's not your responsibility, is nonsense. Even if you can't control the outcome directly, you are responsible for how you deal with the process that leads to the outcome. So, beware with co-signing things that go against the Heavenly Father. Be at peace.